The Last of a Drive and Breed podcast is brought to you by DaftonClassic.com. Because I daily drive my 1970 Westfalia, I know the difference between parts that will work and parts that are truly reliable. I started Dafton Classic to help those who drive classic Volkswagens get access to top quality parts for their daily drivers, their show-winning restoration projects, and everything in between. With locations in both Los Angeles, California, and Salem, Oregon, we are able to serve the VW community across the entire planet with personalized service and up-to-date technical advice that accounts for classic car ownership in the modern world. Visit us at www.daftonclassic.com. But it's not really it's not a formal thing.
All right.
It's really just like the first episode. Don't want to pinch that. You know, I just sat down just like this in a Cliff Crate's backyard.
Throw that inside the bug for right now if you want. I was just out here reading it. I hadn't had a chance.
But yeah, just like with here's your flashlight.
Oh yeah.
Before it goes to LA.
Yeah, I'll get it back.
Mr. Cormack.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Merry syphilis
Christmas.
and a happy gonorrhea. No, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 is better than 2020. What scares me is now that it's 21, it's legal to drink. Oh dear.
Wow! I got nothing for that. That's a good one. So, the theme of the podcast, just to be clear, is it's supposed to be interviewing people who daily drive classic cars and trying to figure out what a classic is. Because that timeline seems to be rolling forward. We're kind of at the point where I just drove a '88 Camry, and my peers were like, "Yeah, that's like a classic wagon," but your generation probably wouldn't look at a 1988 Toyota and be like, "Oh yeah, that's a classic car."
Yeah, probably not. And as the older my generation gets, our cars that we grew up with, like these two, the 57 Bugs here, those are, to me, classics. Now, to somebody your age, yeah, they're more of an antique,
The 50s, yeah. The 50s are...
They're, even to me, the thing's 60-something years old. So, yeah, they're old, but... To me, a classic is in the eyes of the beholder. Now, you want to tell me a brand new, can't tell the difference between a real one and an inner mechanic, a speedster, unless you take a magnet to the body. You want to tell me that speedster isn't a classic? It's a 2019, buddy. Is it a classic? Sure. Is the new Hellcat Charger a classic? If it runs 10s out of the box from the factory, if it isn't a classic now, it's gonna be. I mean, it's instant collectible. So that's what I'd say. Whether anybody thinks your car's a classic or not, shouldn't matter to you. Do you like it? Do you think it's a classic? If you think it is, well, then fine, it is. And does anybody else really matter but you?
So if someone were to come and tell you that not the sort of late 2000s Prius, but the very first Prius. If someone came to you and said a Prius is a classic car because they got it in 97 and we're coming up on 25 years, and that classifies as a classic collectible car in a state like Nevada where you get classic rod plates. Imagine, could you stomach classic rod plates on a Prius?
Would I do it? No. But I understand the guy that bought it brand new in 97 considering it a classic. Would I? Not in a million years.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But then again, I'm old school, I mean, you got to remember, I grew up with 64 Ford Fairlanes and split window Corvettes and oval window Bugs and stuff like that. So I'm old school on that stuff. Mm-hmm. So while I don't know if your Corolla wagon would be a classic to me. But if it was to you, great.
Because 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But I mean, having just turned 30 this year, it's like, oh crap.
Jeez, I'm going to try to remember back that far. 30. Oh yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Never mind.
So, in keeping with the theme, I mean, you don't daily drive these two bugs, but you were an editor at VW Trends,
right?
An editor at Hot VWs,
right?
I know of your tenure at VolksAmerica. So you've driven Volkswagens through the decades.
My first brand new one, I got off the showroom floor. Our neighbor, Hal Sankey, owned Crest Motors in Escondido, California, which was the VW dealership. And in 1969, when I graduated high school, I marched right down there and paid $1,800 for a red with black interior 69 Bug. That was the first one I could ever really call my own. I'd worked on other ones before that, but they were friends of mine. It wasn't mine. Mine was the brand new one. I don't have the VIN number, but if I ever find California black plate Zulu Quincy Sam 624, I don't care if it's been rolled. I don't care if it's been convertible. I don't care if it's been Baha'd. I want it back. Now that to me would be a classic car because it's my only brand new VW other than the wife's Jetta, which doesn't count.
Take or leave it.
Yeah.
And how many Volkswagens have you owned?
Oh boy. How much time do you have?
We got all the time in the world. I'm driving a VW bus back to LA. I got nothing but time.
I'm going to say over 200. I had 11 at one time at my best or worst, depending on how you look at it. I say at my best. My other half may not, feel the same way. But I had 11 of them running, registered, and insured. When I was in Escondido, I actually had a code enforcement officer for the city come by, and I was in the middle of putting a clutch in my 60 convertible. It was a Euro with semaphores in the rear quarter panels. Mm-hmm. And he looks around and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm finishing up putting the pressure plate bolts on this. As soon as I get another throwout bearing on the trans, I got to put the engine back in." And he goes, "You can't be doing that here." Yeah, and then I kind of gave him a quizzical look and went, why? And he goes, "You're running a shop here. Look at all these cars." And I said, "But they're all mine." And he goes, No, you don't do that to me, kid. You're running a shop here. So I said, "Sir, hang on a second. Have a seat here." And I ran inside and I got the titles, the insurance, and the registration for all 11 cars. And I threw them on the driver's seat of all of them and said, "We can go for a ride in 10 of these right now if you want. The 11th one, the convertible, you still got to give me an hour and a half before we take a ride in that one." And he did. He looked at all the registrations and all the titles, and they were all in my name. And he goes, "Well, you still should have a shop down in the auto park," and walked away.
But you weren't running a shop. You were just fixing your cars.
It was my own cars. I was keeping my collection maintained. So there was really nothing he could do. He wasn't happy about it. He thought he'd found himself a good one. Mm-hmm. No, not a legal beagle. And I had a big 6-foot solid wood fence. There was no way the neighbors could see in the backyard. And they didn't care because I was always forever fixing their lawnmowers, their weed eaters, doing plumbing for the old lady next door, just...
So you were running a shop out of your garage, just a 2-stroke shop.
Sometimes, sometimes their lawnmower had quit running. I'd replace the fuel line or something. So they didn't care. So I don't think I was turned in. I think this code enforcement guy just happened to drive by and saw all those and went, "Ugh."
Looking for a quota.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for something to do.
Yeah. Well, guess what, code enforcement officer? Keep looking. So, yeah, I'd say I've had over 200. They were easy to work on. They were cheap. Parts were cheap. And, yeah, I learned from the idiot book. I admit it, you know. And one story that's kind of funny is the first time I ever pulled a VW engine, I was in the Air Force. A friend of mine had a 62 Bug with the 40 horse, probably looking back, number matching. And we needed to put a clutch in it. Okay, well, every car I had ever worked on in my life, the engine came out the top. Deck lid.
On a Beetle?
No, every other car I had worked on before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Chevy, sure. Ford, Plymouth came out the top. The deck lid, the fan shroud, the alternator generator, the intake manifold, the entire exhaust system, including the heater boxes, all the tin around that I could get to. And I have my hands, I had the valve covers off, and I had my hands around the rocker shafts. And I am trying to pull this engine up out of the car. It won't frickin' go. And my hands are bloody, and they're turning into hamburger, and I'm getting annoyed. And a guy comes up and goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to get this engine out of this car." And he goes, "Get out of the way." And he literally kind of pushed me out of the way, grabs the engine, yanks it straight back. It drops on the ground. He picks up on the bumper. The only thing he had to clear was the oil cooler because I had everything else off already. And he goes, "There. Now, once you get the clutch on, go buy a gasket set, and I'll watch you put all the shit back on that you didn't have to take off in the first place." Oh. Oh. And that's how I learned how to pull a VW engine.
So what were you working on before the Volkswagens then, if you were pulling engines out the top?
Mopars. Oh,
Tell me about the Mopars.
Sun rose and set in a Mopar's fanny. If you didn't have a Hemi, you weren't nothing. Well, I had a Hemi Roadrunner, and my friend Jim Nickel had a Hemi Cuda. And we had taken off those horrible Carter AFB 4-barrel carbs that we didn't know how to work on and put Hollies on it. And we had put Doug's headers on it way before they become Doug Thorley headers. This is 1970. Mm-hmm. And the traction bars, the ladder bars that went clear up towards the bell housing up by the rear mount for the front fender. And we were at Orange County Raceway, and we're doing jet changes and trying to get the Hollies to behave right. We're pulling plugs and looking and saying, "Okay, yeah, we're pretty close. Fatten up just one more size." And so he's sitting there at the starting line, and here comes this little orange bug. The pinching bug or the pinchy bug, something like that.
Sure.
And I mean, it sounds angry. It doesn't sound like any VW I knew about, but it was a VW. And I thought, well, it's bracket racing. They're going to have to let that little bug go at least halfway down the track to, make it even. Well, the tree came down even. And I'm watching going, "Yeah, well, nice try, guy." Light comes on the tower side for the bug. Now, I got to tell you, the Cuda was catching up fast. If it had been a 1,500-mile quarter mile or 1,500-foot quarter mile, I think the Cuda would have got it because there is no replacement for displacement. I get that. But the bug won.
And this was the inch pincher.
Yes, this was absolutely the inch pincher with Darrel driving. And I didn't even go see Jim. I stormed into the pits. And as this guy Darrel, this long, dark-haired guy Darrel, was getting out and taking his helmet off, I go, "What do you have in this car?" And I was angry. I was hurt. I was tired. I was greasy. I'd been burned by the spark plugs. It was just, and this little damn bug just beat the Cuda. And he goes, "It's a VW engine." And I said, "Recycled bull food." BS. And he goes, calm down, guy. I was just an irate hippie. And so he pulls the deck lid pins and he takes the deck lid off, and I look, and it doesn't have that black shroudy thing that I'm used to, and it has carburetors on each side. But good God Almighty, it's a Volkswagen engine. Now, you can mess up a small block Chevy and make it faster. You do that with 91 cubic inches, now you have my attention. And that's kind of how it all started. And then my Roadrunner, I was in the Air Force, and that was about the time of odd even gas rationing, where you could only get gasoline on every other day. And that Roadrunner got about 6 miles to the gallon. Probably would have done better if I'd kept my foot out of it, but what's the fun in that? I was living 60 miles off base. I couldn't go on a full tank of gas for 2 days. Maybe I would have made it. I didn't want to try, because if you're late for the Air Force, that's AWOL. That's different than late for work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I sold it and bought a brand new, must have been 69 Bug. Yeah, that's when I got my 69.
Just as a commuter, and you couldn't keep your hands off the engine.
Well, yeah, kind of. The first thing I did was I didn't realize that these little engines, you have to keep them wound up. You don't dare lug them. Well, I didn't learn that until I'd pulled out the studs on the 3/4 side. And the H cases for the 69s, they were a little...
They have a reputation now of being not the ones you want to bore out, because they're a little soft.
Yeah, and the studs, they did have a little bit of a habit of pulling out. Well, me flooring it at 25 and 4th all the time. Yeah, it was, and it finally just pulled the studs out. And that's how I learned about case savers. And, when they say nothing less than 1,000 RPM, they mean it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So.
Yeah, because that's VW people now, the first thing people talk about is, I'm going to get a freeway flyer so I can, because it sounds noisy, and it sounds this, and sounds like it's revenue. Wasserbox, about I'm just having this conversation with my dad on. He's got my panel van again. It's a 2.1, but I tell him, no, wind it out, wind it up, get it to 4,500 RPM, then shift, and then just cruise it like what sounds like 3,000, 3,500. And he's like, I can't do it. Now he's why I'm a Mopar guy. We grew up with Ram Charger, and I learned to drive. Third gen Hemi.
Those things,
first thing I drove was a Hemi, and that's totally different mentality.
But they shift at 3,000 unless you stick your foot in it. Mm-hmm. You can't do that to these; they will overheat. I saw a study, and I don't remember who it was. It might have even been Volkswagen. What pushes the most air with a stock VW doghouse fan? At what RPM? Mm-hmm. And I think it was 2,300. I think it was 2,300. Any more than that, you were just kind of spitting into the wind.
Far be it for me to disagree.
I don't
with
know.
You. My best understanding is about 2,800 RPM.
Okay. Well,
I don't have the test equipment. This is just stuff.
Yeah, I don't either. I would love to find that study again. Check the credentials of who did it, how they measured it, and with what, before I go out on a limb and say, "Oh yes, world, 2,300 is the magic number." I don't know that. Now, okay, you hear me, Internet? I don't know.
All I can provide is the anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
Is, since I put attack in the Bug and I've got attack in this, high roof bus, cruising speed at 60 miles an hour is 3,500 RPM. My driveway got to 126 degrees this past summer. Didn't overheat. And it's 776. It's 8.5 to 1 compression, and it's pushing a box with the box on top.
Yeah,
it's not aerodynamic.
Like I said, it's got all the aerodynamics of a refrigerator.
Right. But it would not overheat, and I attribute that to the gearing being just right for what that bus is. And I don't know what it is, but it is geared
these
low.
Guys that'll try to put a 2180 in their car with a split case trans, or the worst one I used to see is an oval bug. Guy's got a 2180, 2110 dual Delortos or Webers, and he's got stock brakes all the way around. And I asked them, so how fast do you think this thing will go? And they go, oh, it'll bury the speedometer, the 80 mile an hour speedometer in third gear. So you think over 100 miles an hour? And, oh, yeah. Okay. So, and you've got what, 55 mile an hour brakes? Well, yeah. So there's 45 miles an hour of smack that you're not worried about? Well, I guess I maybe should be. I make them stop. Then I make them go. That's how I got to be an old guy.
Is that your relationship with Kevin Zagar?
I've known Kevin for...
Because I just met him a year ago down one of the Euro shows in San Diego. And he's got some cool stuff, and he's got some really nice stuff coming out.
He does. He is now building next level stuff. Yes, Kevin, I said it. Kevin and I used to butt heads. We weren't enemies by any stretch, but we tried to get each other every chance we got. We were pretty fierce competitors. And I had my 21 window bus, and he had his 23. And I'd give him trouble. Oh, not the one that's up in Coos Bay now. Not that one. Oh, his old two-tone green one? Yeah, it's up in Coos Bay now. And, but he had this chestnut brown sealing wax red 23 window that had been smacked up in the right front. And he always put a surfboard there to hide it. So whenever we'd go to Pomona or something, I'd go, hey, what's behind the surfboard? And just give him trouble. And my 21 window, the bottom of the walk-through seat stands used to have yellow shag on them when I got it. Well, I got most of it out, but there were still a few hairs left. And he'd go, well, if I do that, you're going to show off the yellow shag? So we would just needle each other. And I lost contact with him pretty much when I moved up here. We were both in a bus club called Strictly Vintage Twos that was in San Diego. And we'd see each other, but I moved up here in 2005 and kind of lost track of him. I was at a drag day in probably 2014, I'm going to say, and I'm looking at this chassis with an unequal length A-arm front end and some really high-level looking stuff for the front end. And I look up and, damn, that's Kevin. What are you doing with this stuff? You don't know what to do. And he goes, well, this is my company now. I have Cool Rides Customs. And I didn't know. He had been working with Ian Kirkland at Mendiola Transmissions and Suspensions. Well, he went out on his own and started Cool Rides Customs. And I've got a Cool Rides Customs shifter in that silver car right over there. I personally, and it's not Kevin's deal, it's mine. I still have a problem going from third to second with that one. But is it as good as the Berg shifter? I think so. My personal opinion. And I didn't think anything would ever compare to a Berg. But I stand corrected. That one, once I get more used to that 3-2 downshift.
Just to be clear, this isn't a commercial for Cool Rides?
No, not at all.
I just happened to write, but the very first episode kind of gave him a shout out because, again, Cliff Crate with one of his All-State trailer. But Kevin just started reproducing the brackets. Mm-hmm. Like he's picking up these things that no one else is reproducing. He's just reproducing them, and that's super cool. Mm-hmm. So, not an endorsement by any means. Not getting paid to say that, but
Kevin, you can kiss my rosy. No, never mind.
But no, I like Kevin. My short time with him, he's friendly and
he is.
Talk and explain.
Like I say, when I first met him, He was not the Kevin that he is now. Of course, I probably wasn't the Dave that I am now either. So, but we get along great now. He came up here with his partner, Danny Cisneros. I found a 54 bug Baja down in Willow Creek outside of Eureka. And I kept looking and looking and finally went, boy, that sunroof is big. And it was a 3-fold sunroof, had the rib doors, good pan, 4-tab flat hood and everything. So I got it, dragged it home, and Kevin came up from San Diego. He had gone to Oregon, got a Semaphore 56, and then he had another car, another oval on the trailer, mm-hmm. And then he wanted to get the 54, and I'm looking going, pal, you got a logistics problems, and not if you've got a Sawzall. And he cut one of those ovals up right out there on the front driveway, right before my birthday. It was July 20th. And he's out there just sawzalling away, cutting it at the heater channels and just cutting one of the oval bodies up. And it all fit. He got all of it back to San Diego. Yeah, that's when it was. So, yeah, he's out there. Well, you got a Sawzall? Yeah, I got a couple. Well, give them here. Watch this. All right. And he had his son with him, Demetrio, I think it was. And his son was, sweeping up the mess, and that was his job. He did a fine job of cleaning up. Kevin's training him good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fun times. My neighbors just kind of peeked out the window, and I went, and kind of shrugged, and they just shook their heads, closed the blinds. And by the morning, it was all better and all gone, and it never happened.
As it should be. So you also mentioned Berg. Now, I know your famous Berg story.
Yeah.
How you met Gene Berg.
Yeah. Do you want that one repeated?
Because I tripped over one in a friend's backyard. God, I can't remember the name, but it's the oil cooler that mounts right in front of the fan.
Yes, it was. And this was back in the early 80s, there was a series called Race for the Gold. And it was a VW drag racing thing, kind of like the Fast 4 Cartel is now, or Buggerama mm-hmm. Racing Series. And they had come to Carlsbad, and I had a Baja. And I did what everybody at the time had done, and I took a Rapid Cool or a Hayden Trans Cooler.
Rapid Cool, that's what it was. Yeah.
And put it back by the, right over the intake for the fan. And so we're sitting there. My buddy Gary Poles elbows me in the stands, and he goes, do you see who that is looking at your Baja Bug? And I said, yeah, it's some old dude wearing a hat and a flannel shirt in the middle of July. Because, Gene was always in a flannel shirt. And he went, dude, that's Gene Berg. And I went, yeah, okay. You ought to go say hi to him, man. He knows everything. So, okay. So I walked down there, and I go, hello, my name's Dave. And he goes, I'm Gene. Hi, this your car? Yeah, what size is it? 1835. I'm surprised he didn't give me crap about the 92s, but he didn't. And he goes, so how's that oil cooler work? And I said, it works excellently. What's your oil temperature? I can't get it even in the summertime here to go over 200. It just 190 is about it. And he goes, well, that's great. What's your cylinder head temperature? Sir, I don't really know. And he goes, it's probably a good thing you don't, because you're trying to cool off your cylinder heads with preheated air. That is the most effed up place to put an oil cooler I've ever seen. And he walked away. That was it. That was my first meeting with Gene. And I stood there for a second, and I thought about it, and went, oh, wow, you know what? He's got a point. On my way home, I got about a 10-foot length of good oil hose, mm-hmm. put it across over the other side from the starter over by the clutch mounter, the wing nut for the clutch, like 2 days later. Yeah. Good point, Mr. Berg. Thank you. And then I'd seen him over the years, and I asked him if he remembered that, and I don't think he did. I think he had educated so many people that he didn't remember me from anybody.
Yeah, I've heard stories of him stalking Pomona and just looking for things to critique.
When Gene talked, you should listen. He was one of those guys, he's like Fred Simpson with cylinder heads. If Fred decides to talk, shut your mouth and open your ears. Same with Gene. Or Roger Crawford with cylinder heads, or Pat Downs at CB, or any of those guys. If they decide they're going to talk and teach, close your mouth, open your ears, and try to get it all in. Because people like that, we're losing. They're dying away. And one of these days, all that will be gone. I have some tapes, some cassette tapes of a thing I did with VW Trends called 20 Questions with Joe Vittone. And it's me on the phone with Joe talking about, where'd you get your start with all this, Joe? And, where did BRMs come from? And the IMPI logo was one of the first known...
Where the logo...
Where
borrowing started for VWs. Because that was a Pan Am, right?
He was going to Italy, and it was a Pan Am jet. And if you look at the old logo, and you squish it down into an oval and take out PAN-AM and put EMPI, you got it. Mm-hmm. And that's where it came from. And Pan Am's no longer in business, so they can't sue IMPI. But that's where that came from.
And Joe was Darrel's son?
No, his dad.
No. Oh, wow.
Joe was Darrel's dad. He was the one that started IMPI back in 56. See, he had a motorcycle shop at the time in Stockton, but he was starting to play with VWs. And VW said, oh, yeah, your valve guides are... Well, they didn't have valve guides in 36 horses. Mm-hmm. So when the valve bore, for lack of a better term, started to wear, which on an aluminum head didn't take long, VW said, scrap the head, put a new head on it. And Joe thought, well, that's dumb. All the Nortons and all the Ariels and everything that I've ever worked on, they have replaceable bronze valve guides. Why don't we make a replaceable bronze valve guide for these heads? And that is where Engineered Motor Products started, EMPI. So that's how they got their start. And then he was offered a dealership. He said he took Riverside over anywhere else because it was closest to Riverside Raceway. And he wanted to be nearby where he could test out all his stuff.
And that was Econo Motors.
Yes. 520 Roberta Street was the actual IMPI, but Econo was in the Riverside Auto Mall. And he told me that he would get calls from the dealers in L.A. saying, the Germans are coming, because Volkswagen would send over a bunch of guys from Germany to inspect the dealerships. And Joe said, that gave me about 2 hours to get all the GTVs out of the front showroom, hide all the C-stripes and the Sprint Stars and the 5 spokes.
Oh, my word.
And he basically had to put all that stuff way back in the back lot so that by the time the Germans got there, there was nothing but bone stock VWs in the showroom and around the area.
And Joe just passed away, was that Darrel?
Yeah, Darrel just passed away. Joe's been gone for about, probably 6-7 years now.
Darrel passed away. He was at Tectonics.
Yes, up in Sheridan. Mm-hmm. He is the one that took a 25-horse cased Carmen Ghia to 151 miles an hour. It can't be done, but that you don't tell Darrel that. That was like, tell Darrel he can't beat a Hemi Cuda, and let's see what happens.
So much of the VW history was before my time that this is why we're doing this, because I was under the impression that Joe was Darrel's son.
No.
But I'm happy to be corrected. I'm less wrong.
I don't think Darrel and Sharon had kids. If I'm not mistaken, they did not. Not that I ever heard. He never mentioned it. But Colin Guyanis is still running Tectonics up in Sheridan.
I'm going to edit this out, but yeah, I've sold him parts. That was super cool. I met Colin my very first VW show up at Woodburn. Yeah, that's where VW stuff started.
Colin loves gliders. He's into gliders.
That's what he was buying my OEM Volkswagen lifters for.
Yeah.
As far as Volks plans, because he's right there next to Evergreen.
Oh, by the way, if you know anybody that wants a 2-cylinder VW motor, let me know. Case has been cut in half. It's a 78 4-scat crank that has been cut. Half a cam. It's an Stromberg, or I think updraft carburetor. Everything to build a 2-cylinder aircraft motor. It's right here in town.
Why would someone want to cut a 4-cylinder in half to fly?
Probably for an experimental aircraft, my guess. Or like an ultralight, maybe.
So just weight savings, fuel economy?
My guess, yeah. I'm not sure, but our local machine shop here, a friend of mine that I used to go to Bonneville with him every year, single-engine Ford, ran 337 on a 348 record, which that's miles per hour. That's moving. And he's not going to be doing it anymore. He finally retired, but yeah, that's where I saw Darrel do his thing.
And this machinist has this 2-cylinder VW.
Yes, he does. Just sitting in a pile.
Wow.
So, know anybody that wants it, give me a call later, and I'll set you up with the guy.
That's the kind of stuff Cliff would say that belongs on a shelf, like his Rapid Cool.
Yeah,
belongs on a shelf. The story I got on Rapid Cool and why Gene Berg was so out to get the Rapid Cools was they went to him to test it and to prove that this was going to cool your engine by 15%. Well, it changed the engine temperature by 15%, but it made the cylinder heads run 15% hotter. And so he said, this is no good. Rapid Cool advertised 15% difference in cooling and sold them accordingly.
Well, they were right-ish.
That's just a story. Again, this is well before my time.
Well, I've seen stuff like that where people would say, here, this is the newest, latest, and greatest neat bitchin' thing. Give it a try. And I would go back to him and go, look, and this happened, and I won't mention the name. This thing did not fit. I broke it already, and it did not perform and do what you said it was going to do. Now, I can either take all my data, just print the data in VW Trends, and let the reader figure it out for themselves, or you cannot take this and put it on the market until you address these problems. Well, you can't print that. The hell I can't. It's only liable if you lie. And these are my findings with your muffler bearings, with your piston return springs.
Can't even mention what it was.
No, I don't want to do that.
So not a power pulley then.
No. They fixed it. And I ran a story on it, and all life was good. But the first one they sent me, no, I won't run it. And if I won't run it, I'm not going to tell you to. And I used to get in fights with the boss over that. Dave, this guy advertises 2 pages of color in the magazine. Do you know how much that is? Yeah, I do. But if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, smells like a duck, and eats like a duck or a piece of garbage.
It's your job as a journalist to tell people that it's a duck or a piece of garbage.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I know I made some pretty big name advertisers upset with me, but my main allegiance wasn't really to the advertisers, and that's where I ran into trouble with the bosses. Is my my allegiance was the guy in Timbuktu, Tennessee, who it was either me or J.C. Whitney, you know, and I'm telling them that this thing is the latest and greatest. And if I can't make it work with all of Southern California at my disposal, what chance do they have? And then, okay, let's look at this long term. It's a piece of crap and it didn't work. The guy's going to throw it in the trash. He's going to get mad. He's going to sell his bug and go buy a Toyota or a Honda or a Chevy truck or something. Okay, we've now lost the opportunity to sell parts, magazines, stuff at car shows. We've lost this guy. And all the money he was going to spend on this car for a $15 part that didn't work. Was it worth it? My guess would be no. So that's how I managed to get in trouble a lot.
So you started, your first magazine was Trends.
Yes, it was.
How did you get into VW Trends?
Their vintage historical editor, who is still one of my best friends, was Lee Hedges, the Type 3 Gia guy down in San Diego. He had bought an old deluxe, I think 64 bus that he called Friedrich. And he wanted to do the brakes. He was actually going to take a drive up the coast to Crescent City, just with the family, just to do a drive up the coast. And he did after we were done, and he wrote about it in VW Trends. But he goes, I've never done brakes on these. And I pulled off the front drum, and there's something weird here. There's like 2 wheel cylinder, you know. He didn't quite get it. And I said, I've done brakes on buses. If you got all the parts, you know, get me at least Brazilian, if not German wheel cylinders, you know, and all that. So anyway, we did the brakes on his bus. And I go inside his house to wash my hands, and I see these 8x11 manila envelopes, and one said Thing, Tennessee, one said Oval, New Jersey, and then there were a couple of others in the stack. And Lee, what are those? And he goes, oh, those are stories that Henry de Kuyper, the editor, wants me to write. And I go, well, you're going to do them? And he goes, no, I'm going to send them back. I don't want to do that. I like doing the vintage stuff, the research, you know, the history of this, the history of that, the wood-burning VWs, you know, all that stuff. I don't want to do features. And at the time, I was working a graveyard shift as a transit bus mechanic, which I hated. Oh, it was nasty, greasy, horrible, and ours stunk. And let me try. So he called up Henry and said, hey, I got this guy down here that wants to try it. Not that, then I'm going to send him back to you. And Henry said, well, give him to him. You know, let's see what the guy's got. I mean, worst case scenario, I don't use what he did. The photographs are there. If I don't like what he did, then we won't run it. And he gets nothing for his time. Okay, well, you know, that's fair. So I wrote the story on the Thing from Tennessee. Didn't hear anything. Summer day, I had just gotten up. It was probably about 2 in the afternoon because I'm working graveyard. I get home at 7 and go to sleep. Go out to the mailbox, and here's an envelope from McMullen Argus Publishing. And it's a check for many hundreds of dollars. Whoa! Hey! And on the memo, it said Thing, Tennessee. So I started doing freelance for them for about a year. I was doing freelance in 95, 96. And in 97, I happened to see Henry at a jamboree. And we were talking, and he goes, yeah, you know, everything's going good. Hey, what are you doing now for a real job? And I said, oh, I'm transit bus mechanic on a graveyard shift. He goes, do you like that? No, I frickin' hate it. It's disgusting. I can't stand it. But I'm married. I got to make the house payment. I got to do this. And he goes, well, would you consider going to work for VW Trends as the tech editor? And I made him repeat it because I didn't think I heard him right. There's music and stingers going off at 4,500 RPM, and I don't have very good hearing anymore. Would you repeat that? And he goes, yeah, would you like to be the tech editor for VW Trends? Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, he goes, I can teach you how to photograph cars. Here's what I can't teach you. What size fender bolts do you use on a Bug? And I said, well, the 13 millimeter mainly, but the early cars had a 14 millimeter head. And he goes, that's what I can't teach you. And that was the question he asked me, was fender bolts. He knew the answer. He wanted to see if I did, and I did. He goes, I can teach you how to take pictures. I can't teach you what you have learned over the last 25 years about VWs. So he hired me. And that's when I became the tech editor for VW Trends. And funny enough, I lived in Escondido, and Dean Kirsten from Hot VWs lived in Vista. We were both tech editors for VW magazines living in North County, San Diego. There was even one time, I was still with Trends, he was with Hot VWs. We had both gone to a show in the Southeast that Walter Tate had put on, the IVWA. Well, I had the car show results, but I would email and call Walter and Cynthia Tate, and I could not get the drag race results. They just weren't sending them. And I mean, this is like 6-7 months later, and I'm going, if I don't have this pretty soon, with a 3-month lead time, by the time I can write this and get it in the magazine, it's going to be time for the new one the week after this magazine comes out. It just confused people. So I was talking to Dean, and I said, yeah, I'd like to write this story, but I can't get the drag racing results. And he goes, you've got the show results? And I said, yeah, why? And he goes, I can't get the show results. I've got the drag racing. So there is a town between Vista and Escondido called San Marcos, where VW Paradise is. We met at a hamburger stand, and I know it looked for the world like a drug deal. It was at night, and I kind of looking around, and here you go. And he handed me what I needed. I handed him what he needed. We both ran off and wrote our stories. So, it was one of we had to do it. So, and Dean and I, we competed out there on the guardrail. Damn right we did. I would do everything in my power to steal a feature from him, and he would do it to me. But as soon as the cameras were put away, it was a drag race to see who could buy the other one the first beer. We ended up being good friends. I mean, how could you not? And we would go out to dinner at our favorite Chinese restaurant called the Bamboo House in Escondido. And Dean would bring his lovely lady, his wife, Kathy, and I'd bring my wife. And, Dean had asked me, well, what are you doing for the cover this month? And if it was a red 67, I'd tell him it was a black oval, and he knew I wasn't going to tell him the truth. And he goes, so how are you liking VW Trends? And I said, not a whole lot. There's just things going on that I don't like very much. And his wife goes, well, why don't you come to work with Dean at Hot VWs? And that was another one of those, would you repeat that, please? Well, Jeff Holyfield just left. Why don't you go to work for Dean at Hot VWs? And I looked at Dean and I go, and he goes, hey, maybe let me talk to Bruce, see what happens. So about a week later, I get a call from Dean going, hey, can you meet us at this lunch place in Costa Mesa at such and such a time? And I said, yeah. So I went and met Dean and RK and Bruce and Linda Dill and Steve Gutowski, who was the ad guy. Next day he calls and goes, so when do you want to start? And that, back in the early days of the internet, there was a a forum called the Cow Look Forum, and that's where all the hot rod guys hung out. It was run by a fellow named John Plow in Canada. And boy, when they got wind of me defecting over to Hot VWs, I was like I started a world war. And people were saying, well, how is VW Trends going to survive without K for Dave? Which was crazy. Of course they were gonna. But it caused quite a stir in the force. It made a lot of people kind of angry. I just thought they would be a better fit for me. And it was going to be a lot less damage control. I'll leave it at that.
So, not being around for VW Trends, what was the difference between VW Trends and Hot VWs?
At the time, I would say Hot VWs was more into the kind of the typical resto custom cow look, Porsche red 67s with a BRMs and 2276 and IDAs, where VW Trends was willing to think outside the box a little more. Volks rods, German look, little bit of patina car, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they were willing to go outside the box because they knew there was no way they were going to beat Hot VWs at their own game. You weren't going to do it. So we had to kind of like do an end run around Hot VWs to, see what we could do with it. And, the box, think outside the box. There's a good story. There was a guy who's now gone named Mark Herbert. And he had this car, and pardon my French internet, but it was called, and still is, the Super Shitbox. And this thing was a toilet with tires. This thing was shag nasty, ugly, 4 different colors of primer, Taco Bell wrappers in the back. The rear apron was made out of plywood. This thing was a toilet with tires.
Super Beetle?
No, this is 65, I believe.
Okay, so it's just the Super Shitbox. Okay.
Yeah. And he had the internals of the motor written on the roof panel by the window. You know what it had in it. This thing looked like it shouldn't even get out of the driveway. But on slicks, it ran low 10s in the quarter mile. And so Ryan Price at the time was the boss, the editor of VW Trends, and said, we got to think outside the box. Okay, outside the box. Oh, have I got a box for you? And I called Mark and said, we want to do a full-on 4-page color feature on the Super Shitbox. And he goes, you're kidding me. And I said, no, we're serious as a heart attack, pal. We want to do it. And that was the same day we had him there at Irwindale Raceway with Muffler Mike Sheldon doing a story on, you know who Muffler Mike is?
I do not know.
Okay. He won Pro Eliminator, I think 4 times in a row. 4 years in a row. He was unbeatable. The guy was a machine with his car. Anyway, we had done that story, and we had done the Super Shitbox and Muffler Mike. We were just about finished, and Mike had his friend Jim Hagethorn there with a real nice red car with a turbo on it. I said, I wonder if we can get like a synchronized burnout, with both of you guys doing a gnarly smoky burnout at the same time. I don't know. So we tried it, and they had just repaved the infield at Irwindale. So they were hooking up, which is not what we wanted.
Right.
Mike, you got any ATF? And he goes, yeah, I got it. Give it here. Oh, yeah. If you ever see the cover of VW Trends, you will see a red 62 and a Bahama blue 63 ragtop. The whole back end is just engulfed in smoke. And that was on the cover. Well, that was the infamous twin burnout, Well, I mean, the thing's sending out smoke clouds like crazy. Sure enough, here comes Doug Stokes, the owner-manager of Irwindale Raceway, in his golf cart. He comes to the infield and he looks, and the divots where they had literally worn a dip
through this new asphalt.
Mm-hmm. And it's still steaming. Doug comes up and looks at it and he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, it's water." And he called me on that and he goes, "No, it's not. I can smell it. That's ATF. You take you and your camera and your VW guys and you get the hell out of here and don't ever come back." I went back later, but he didn't know it was me. Yeah. So, yes, I did get thrown out of Irwindale for that one, but it was a really cool cover.
And what year was this?
98, 99.
I was in elementary school. Sorry, Dave.
Well, if you find the VW trends with two cars doing a simultaneous burnout, and the story is called Fast Friends.
That's a story. It's
the truth.
That's the stuff of legends.
And then you know what Mid-America Motor Works is?
I'm aware. I'm obviously aware of MAM now.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a big advertiser, big parts seller in Illinois, Effingham, Illinois. Well, Mike Yeager owns it. Real nice guy. And he has a show out there every year, the Fun Fest. Well, he invited a guy that he was sponsoring his race car, Eric Madsen, who has a Carmen Ghia that will easily run in the 8s. Easy run 8s in the quarter mile. Well, he's out there and I'm out there, and I know him from all the drag strips and seeing him all around and stuff. Mm-hmm. I look at the car and go, "Hey, the key's in it?" And he goes, "No, but you just hit that switch and push the button. There is no key. It's just a kill switch and the start button." Okay, so I get in the car, climb around the roll cage, flip the switch, hit the button, and the thing roars to life. And I look over at Eric, and he's, "Okay, whatever." Do not ever drive slicks and a spool, a locked transaction, in the grass. It digs up the grass something terrible. And this was right in front of the corporate office of Mid-America Motor Works.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And the thing's so noisy, and I didn't know. And I looked over at Eric, and I could see kind of the panic in his eyes. His eyes got real wide. But I didn't know. I just knew the car was, kind of hopscotching around a little bit. And after I parked it and got out, you could see all these divots where the grass is gone. And I look under Eric's car, and the whole back quarter panel is full of mud and grass. Oopsie. Well, I got most of it out from Eric's car. And I fessed up to Mike and said, "Yeah, Mike, I'm sorry. It seemed like a good idea at the time." And he just, "I'll just have the gardener take care of it Monday, but don't do that again." I promise, never again, never. And I never did do that again. But he didn't throw me out. But yeah, I should have known when I saw the look on Eric Madsen's eyes that something is not right. What is wrong with this picture? Because he saw it throwing sod everywhere.
Well, I'm sure this car doesn't have mirrors. It's not.
It's a race car.
You can't see what's going on behind you. What's going on behind you doesn't matter.
Exhaust pipes this long coming out of the turbo, a foot long, and that's it. Yeah, you don't know what's going on. You're not supposed to be looking behind you anyway. Oops.
So, what was your most memorable story then?
Oh,
I'm a bit bold of me to presume that there's a more memorable story than these two. But I'm sure there's got to be one that was, super rare, super the I mean, my mind's going towards there's got to be a car that the odds were this car shouldn't be here today. something like a pre-import, pre-Hoffman car, or...
I drove a Bill Collins' Hebmuller with no Krauser motor in it.
Tell me about that.
Well, Bill Collins was, he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth. He lives in New Hampshire, and he is a vintage guy all the way through. He even had a club called Der Käferfahrer, which was the bug drivers, pre-57, and you had to put on at least 1,500 miles a year to be in the club. And they'd check. Well, he's had a fall foliage tour where all these guys get together and they drive around Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, looking at all the fall colors. And he asked me to come, and I said, yeah, well, I don't think the rental car is going to be a pre-57. And he goes, no, you can drive my sunroof. It was a 53 Zwitter sunroof with Ocrasa heads and carbs and Porsche brakes. That was fun. That little thing thought it was a 1600 with Cadrons. It did real well for itself. But that was fun. Doing the wheelie off with Clyde Berg was a ton of fun. We were at Buggerama, and Clyde was there, and Muffler Mike was there, and they're both known for their outrageous on-the-bumper wheel stands. And I know them both pretty well, and I said, hey, you know what we ought to do? We ought to have a wheelie off. See who can do the best wheelie. So we did, and I don't remember. There's a picture of it in Hot VW's. VW Trends, Freudian slip. And it's all over the internet. If you just look up wheelie off, you'll probably see it. Mm-hmm. But I think it was Clyde got the hang time award and Mike got the altitude award. I think Mike went higher up, but I think Clyde carried it further. But I got a shot of both of them, and then I have a picture in the office of Clyde's car, and he's doing his patented Clyde wheelie. Well, there's a helmet on the passenger side. Some dork from VW Trends is, I wasn't ready for this. Looking at all, he had decals, VW stickers for a headliner in his car. And I said, take me for a ride, take me for a ride. Well, I don't have a seat. Well, finally, one day at Buggerama, he brought a seat with him and a seat belt. Yes, okay. So the guy, we go pulling up, and the track Nazi goes, you can't have him in this. Yeah, he's belted in. He's got a helmet. So the track guy goes, all right, well, run 14s. Do not go into the 13s. Don't do it. Well, like Clyde's going to stay in the 14s? No. Clyde Berg? Yeah, he's going to stay in the 14s. Right. So he stands on it, puts the wheels up in the air, scares the hell out of me, but hell of a good ride, lots of fun. Ran like a 12:0 something, which of course got him tossed, but the event was over. I mean, everything was done. People were leaving, so throwing him out of a throwing
him out of the bar at 1:45 in the morning.
Yeah, or at 1:55 in the morning. There's no harm, no foul, and that was a lot of fun. I've had so much fun doing all that. There were some times that weren't all that great that I don't talk about because it would serve no purpose.
The Last of a Driver Breed podcast is brought to you by DaphneClassic.com. Because I daily drive my 1970 Westfalia, I know the difference between parts that will work and parts that are truly reliable. I started Daffin Classic to help those who drive classic Volkswagens get access to top quality parts for their daily drivers, their show-winning restoration projects, and everything in between. With locations in both Los Angeles, California, and Salem, Oregon, we are able to serve the VW community across the entire planet with personalized service and up-to-date technical advice that accounts for classic car ownership in the modern world. Visit us at www.daftingclassic.com. How much do you know, again, calling back to Cliff Crate, his 55's got a Joe Okrasa motor. Who was Joe Okrasa?
Well, Okrasa is from the Ottinger Motor Works. And there was a company called Ottinger Engineering in Germany who made the heads and got the Solex carbs, made the manifolds, linkage, and heads to fit on a 36 horse. Joe Okrasa is a guy named Joe Ruiz in Anaheim, I believe. And he rebuilds them and does a magnificent job. But did he have anything to do with the original Okrasa? I don't think Joe Okrasa was born yet. So, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And then, now that Wolfsburg West has the heads and the carbs and everything reproduced, yeah. But
yeah, because Joe Okrasa is a name that gets tossed around, and I didn't know if he was like, kind of like a Vittone with Tectonics. If he was.
He is probably the best Okrasa 36 horse rebuilder in the country, maybe the world. He is one of the best. It's like you want to run a Judson, you get a hold of George Fulci, Judson Supercharger. You get a hold of George Fulci. So, yeah, that's who Okrasa Joe, gotcha. I believe, is.
Okay, fair dues. And then we're recording this sitting next to your 257s.
The silver-haired mistress that lives in the garage.
But how did you come across that car?
That car belonged to my boss's sister. She bought it brand new from Don Sharp VW in Oceanside, California. And I had been trying to buy that car from her for years and years, just years and years. She'd never sell it, would never sell it. And finally, one day, my boss says, hey, call Marguerite. She may want to sell her car. So I called her. She said, well, here's my problem. I'm not going to be driving that much anymore. My brother John will take me anywhere I need to go. So I'm going to be getting rid of the Bug. However, I have two, I guess they were grandsons, and they both want the car badly. One of them already has one of those, and she called it a Bahia Bug kits for it.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, like cut the fenders and the aprons and yeah.
Oh.
And she said, so really the two of them are fighting over it. So the only democratic thing I really have that I can do is not sell it to either of them. Well, Marguerite, I am your guy. So I bought it from her and I drove it with the old tired 36 horse for a couple of years, and then it turned into the, and next time I will think of a shorter title, but that became the VW Trends SoCal Imports Incorporated Project Mail Order Resto Custom. And if you look at that VW Trends up there, July 2001, that's me being chased by a New Beetle cop car. Oh, that's a good story. Okay, so that's the Escondido Dare police car. First of all, that light bar on that New Beetle isn't there. That was 4 hours of Photoshop. I can say that now. You try to put a flat light bar on a curved roof like that. Let me know how it works out for you. It's tough. So, okay. So anyway, we're all done. And my friend Rob, we had trailered the car down to Fiesta Island in San Diego. And we did the photo shoot with it and all that. And so it's all over. Everybody's putting their cameras away and stuff. Rob starts putting out the ramps. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, getting ready to take the car home. And I said, it's had its moment in the sun. It's been photographed. We know the photos turned out bitchin'. I want to drive this car. I've been waiting for weeks for this photo shoot. Now I can drive the car without worrying about getting a nick or a scratch or a dink in the windshield. Okay. So we are sitting at SeaWorld Drive, the on-ramp onto I-5. And it's one of those 2-into-1s where they stagger the lights and stuff. Well, the cop is there revving his engine and, pretending like, he's going to do a front wheel burnout and all that. And Cormack, grow a brain. Don't street race a cop. This is so no-win. Well, the light turns green and he hazes the tires and takes off. Well, screw this. And I stuffed that car full of first and I nailed it and I powered into second, drove around him in second, put it in third, hit fourth on the freeway. Never saw him the whole night. I beat him onto the freeway. A couple days later, I'm driving the Bug, and I see the New Beetle police car, and I honk my horn and wave at him, and he gives me the most stern look I've ever had and shook his finger at me like, don't even. And it was a thing, it was the look like your dad will give you when you come home after drinking too much and you're under 21 kind of look, like, dude, you are in such trouble.
They actually made I'm guessing it was a promotional thing, or was it like an actual patrol car?
No, it was a DARE car, Drug Abuse Resistance Education.
Gotcha.
So it never had a light bar. That just went around to all the schools.
Right.
And then I know you've heard assault with a deadly semaphore. No? Okay. I had a split window Bug. 50 on a 67 pan, 1835 Zenith carb. Had semaphores, and they were NOS semaphores, so they worked real good, but they were on 12 volt. And I didn't have them bolted dropped down. So I changed the bulbs so the bulbs wouldn't burn out in a half a second. But when they popped out.
Snapped up.
Yeah. And I was a street sweeper for the city of Escondido. So my boss had told me, I don't care if you go the wrong way down Valley Parkway. I don't care if you go sideways. Just get the curb and gutter clean before I come to work. All right. So I'd get to work about 3. I'd give the drunks enough time after the bar closed to either get home, get arrested, or crash, whatever they were going to do. And then I'd hit the streets. So it's 2:45, and I'm driving the split. And I look in the back window, and everything's blue and red. Well, crap, I'm getting pulled over. Yeah, all right. And remember, the splits had the dual glove boxes. Okay, so he asked me driver's license, proof of registration, insurance, blah, blah, blah. So I handed it all to him, and he's standing right at the B pillar with his flashlight looking in at everything, looking for guns, drugs, I don't know, looking for whatever they look for. And I said, can you tell me why you pulled me over? And he goes, yes, because when you turned from Broadway onto Valley Parkway, you did not use your turn signal. And it was a left turn that I had made. And I thought, well, maybe there's something wrong with the semaphores. And I had them wired hot. The car did not have to be on. So I hit the switch in the center of the dash. And have you ever popped yourself right between your nostrils? Bam, bam, like that. It hurts. Do it. You'll see what I mean. It smarts. Well, okay, so you're a cop. It's a little before 3 in the morning. You've been busting tweakers and drunks and, all that. You pull over this long-haired kid in a lowered loud VW. The next thing you know, there's a flash of light and your nose hurts. What are you going to do?
Well.
See, he was standing right by the B pillar.
Right, because that's where the semaphore is, right behind, right behind the window. And it came
out and caught him right there, right between the nose holes. So, like I say, I don't blame the guy. If I was a cop, I would have drawn down on me too. And I'm looking going, dude, you got hollow points in that thing. Because, it was, right there. Oh, hello, Darrel. Yeah. So I sat there and just kind of, Mom's not going to believe how her son died. She is just not going to believe this. But he goes back to his car. He's there for a few minutes. He hands me back all my papers. Have a nice day, Mr. Cormack. Drive carefully. And takes off. And I always thought those cop cars had posi in them. This one didn't. It was a one-tire fire for about a block. I'm sure he headed for the closest donut store. I can't make this up. I mean, I couldn't do it again.
The nose with your... Because he was watching for a flash, not a... Semaphores, they pop out of the B-pillar.
And then they
just light up. Do they flash?
No, they don't flash, but they light up.
Yeah. So it's just a marker light on the side of the car.
Yeah. And it popped out and it flashed. So, like I say, there's a flash of light and his nose hurts.
Flicked him in the nose. That's hilarious.
And I dare anybody to, you'd have to practice to recreate that. And I'm not going to be a guy on the outside because I know how bad that must have hurt.
Yeah, because it's not just a semaphore. This is 12 volt on a 6.
Yeah, 6 volt on 12 volts of fury.
Boom.
So, yeah, that one was scary.
And then this car, BTL 057.
Got lucky with the plates. A friend of mine down in Eureka, Lloyd McClelland, I had heard he had an oval window, but had never seen it. And Lloyd's one of those just kind of under the radar, doesn't do much guys. Has a real nice Cadillac 62 in his garage. He calls me about 3 years ago and goes, "So, you want to buy my oval?" Well, I don't know, maybe. I've never really seen the car. And he goes, "Well, come down and take a look at it." So I go down to Eureka and look, and I'll tell you, this thing was actually in better shape than that was when I started. The heater channels were perfect. He had better fenders than that were on it for it. He had everything for it. He bought it in 2002. He had been buying parts from Wolfsburg West and other places since 2002 for the car. Everything on the brakes except for the drums, the pedal, and the clevis going to the brakes master cylinder. Mm-hmm. Everything else is new, even the little T-fitting in back. He had all this stuff for it. It had a running 36 in it. And what do you want for it? And he goes, "Well, what I paid for it in 2002, which was $1,200. Oh. And that's the parts too. And he goes, "Yeah, what am I going to do with the parts if I don't have the car?" So I was back in a day or two with the money. And it had a 1960 36 horse engine in it. Well, a friend of mine in Sacramento has a 60 convertible without an engine. Well, by golly, he has one now, and it's a runner. This one, Lloyd had gotten the pedigree from them about when it was built and all that. The original Herman the German installed engine is sitting over there in a big rubber tub. Number matching. If anybody wants to restore this, I got the number matching 36 for it.
Separately from the rest of the car?
No, it came with the car.
Okay.
It came with the car, but it needs to be rebuilt. So the guy put another 36 from a 60 convertible or a 60 bug in it. Mm-hmm. And drove it around until he didn't. And then Lloyd got the car and bought it in 2002 and sat on it until 2018 when I came along and got it. And it spent, otherwise being in Eureka, being outside that long, there probably wouldn't have been a whole lot worth fixing. But it had been the whole time in the garage. And it came up from Berkeley. So, so it was, relatively rust-free.
And the plates are original to the...
Well, originally it would have had the yellow and black plates like the
true.
silver car. So I don't know when they got changed, but I can go all the way back to about 95 with some old registrations that was on there. There was another interesting story. I'm taking pictures of this car and putting them on Facebook. And a buddy of mine that's a teacher at one of our schools goes, "Hey, does that thing have 2 holes on each side by the air intake louvers?" And I said, "Yeah, Thad, it does." He goes, "Tell me, does it look like the interior was ever metallic blue?" And I said, "There's still metallic blue at the bottom of the A-pillars by the heater channels." And he goes, "How far back can you take this car?" And I said, "Well, to 2002. And he goes, "I'll take it back to about 1989, 1990 for you. That belonged to my friend T-Man when we were going to Berkeley getting our teaching credentials." I have not found T-Man yet, and Thad hasn't found him either, but I'm looking for him. Yeah, so...
Wow.
And Lloyd has not seen the car yet. He does, he's seen pictures, but he's not seen the car because I told him, you need to come up and drive this thing. This is what you wanted to do and were never able to for whatever reasons. You need to.
Yeah, and now Scott, you showed me when I got here. It's got just a single carb 7076 bone.
Simple.
Basically bone stock. But what I call bone stock plus.
Yeah,
is how I describe it.
It's a 1600 with a big bore kit.
Yeah.
It's got a 90 amp alternator on it, and a, wazoo type, muffler exhaust. But by and large, you know what it's like getting number 1 plug out of that thing?
We've talked about this before with the weathers.
Well, right there. That's probably permanent now. This one, I can do it by braille. There they are. And I enjoy the power of that one, but if I have to work on either one of them, I would prefer this one.
That's how I've come to understand these cars. Power's great, but my bus is a daily. The Bug before that was a daily. The Bug I had before that was a daily, and it's like, if I gotta make an adjustment on the side of the road, I don't want to be pulling intake manifolds off.
Yeah.
And I've got these big old ogre Shrek hands.
Yeah, you're like me. They're bigger than mine. Yeah, good luck with that.
Getting behind the air cleaners to get to the forward stud nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, this one, I've driven it in the rain. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it rains up here, and I'm going to drive this thing when I damn please. And if it's raining, well,
it's going to get wet.
And it's going to get door dinged, and it's going to get nicked, and it hasn't yet. And yes, I did use my chamois as soon as it got in the garage and chamoised it down, but that's just because it's brand new to me. But it's not going to be like that forever. It's going to get dusty, and it's going to be dirty, and the wheels won't be shiny, and
there's nothing wrong with that.
It's going to be a car.
Difficult for me to fathom. I can understand putting a lot of money and time and energy and making a car pretty. I can't imagine doing that and just being okay with it just sitting.
That thing came so close to just being a piece of furniture. When it was first built, it was almost a piece of furniture, Brendan. I was afraid to drive it. What if I get a nick in it? And polar silver metallic, good luck spotting that in. So, yeah.
There's a couple other things I want to get to, but you've also got this big engine up on your stand.
Yeah, if I ever wanted to make this thing a pain in the butt to work on, I could.
Because I remember the last time I was here, you had your air filter mod.
Yeah.
That was on the deck lid.
Yeah, that's on the silver car. Did you want to see it again?
Yeah.
Because everybody told me.
Because I've watched people tell you it can't be done on Facebook.
Yeah, you can't run air filters on tall manifolds and not have your deck lid popped at the top or the bottom. Are you real sure about that? Are you positive? Yeah, I am. Well, then how did this happen? Oh. Well, oh golly, you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, angles, so you have individual filters for each throw.
Yeah, they're K&N motorcycle filters. And we did do a dyno on this thing with the velocity stacks. Did nothing. Didn't change the oil, didn't reset the valves, didn't do anything except take off the velocity stacks and put on the air cleaners. At 6,000 RPM, this thing lost about 1/10 of a horsepower.
1/10.
Yeah, it went from like 166.5 to 166.4.
Wow.
That's okay. I can do that.
That's a trade-off.
Yeah, and a tenth of a horsepower.
You're not going to feel it.
Yeah, well, and that thing's got enough power. You know, I don't need more. It's got enough to get me where I want to go in a hurry.
I guess if you need to get going, we can wrap this up. But just on kind of a personal note, I wanted to get your side for posterity because we just went through this a couple weeks ago again on Facebook. But the story of Randy and the wheels and where the wheels came from, and obviously there's a company in Mexico reproducing them now, and Kip One. Not to talk about my competition, however, they're selling them and making a lot of money on them. Seeing them at shows.
Okay.
And I mentioned this because I just got to see the original centers on Jeremy's wall last week.
Do you know who has the original RDW?
You do.
Yes, I do. I have a Randar that is etched in the center. It says, "To Mr. Cormack from Mr. Picton," because I used to see him and I'd go, "Mr. Picton, how you doing?" And he, "Hello, Mr. Cormack," and we just called each other Mr. just cause, no particular reason, just did. And okay, so VW Trends. I'm good friends with Bruce Myers too. And he lived 10 miles from me in Escondido, and he'd come by and we'd shoot the bull. And I had a original Myers Manx for quite some time. Mm-hmm. So we were looking to do a giveaway car at VW Trends. So, well, how about a Myers Manx? Well, see what you can do. So I went to Bruce and said, "Okay, you're a small potato. I will not allow you to give us a body for free. It's not going to happen. If you can cut us a smoking deal where you don't make any at all or barely any at all, that I would accept." And he said, "Well, okay, then you can have this one for X amount of dollars. And that is what I will have into it, plus about $100. And done. Okay. Well, then we went to Interstate VW, got a 68 pan, had Steve Widowson down in El Cajon shorten it and do the chevron shorten. There's the right way and the wrong way to shorten a pan for a buggy. And you don't just cut the pan straight across, because then it has a tendency to kind of
weak point across the pan. Okay.
Sag in the middle. You cut it on an angle going up to the tunnel and match the two together that way, the chevron cut, the angle cut, and that helps keep everything nice and stable. So we had that done. We got a 0-mile motor from Scat, did all this beautiful car, neat car. Well, we're getting ready to advertise that we're going to be giving this car away. And Bruce gets a hold of me and says, "Go see my friend Dave Deal. He's got some artwork that he wants to donate to you guys to help give away this Manx." Okay, well, Dave Deal was well known in the auto industry. He did cartoons from the 60s and did advertisements for Scat and all kinds of people. He was even in on the very first Cars movie. Anyway, so I go to see him, and he lives in Vista, about 2-3 miles from Dean Kirsten. Had to get that in, Dino. Sorry. And so we're talking away. I'd driven the silver car, and he goes, nice Raider wheels. Don't see those much anymore. And I said, you know what those are, Dave? And he goes, oh, yeah, I used to work for the Raider Wheel Corporation. I made a wheel for them that never went into production. Looks like an Iron Cross. Yeah, I did. What happened to it? And he goes, it's up in my attic. Now, this is inland San Diego in July. It's probably 120 degrees in that damned attic. But I wasn't going to give up. I probably lost 5 pounds up there. But I finally found the center of this wheel, put it in a hoop, and got that very famous picture of Dave and the wheel holding the center of it. And I put that in VW Trends with just a little story saying, hey, people, keep looking. Stuff's out there. And there was that and a couple of NOS MP radios that some friends of mine had uncovered in Escondido. Well, next thing you know, about a month after that issue hit the stands, there's Dave's wheel being reproduced in Germany. Called DSR, Der Steiner Rad. Mm-hmm. I called Dave and said, did you give these guys permission to do this? And he goes, I didn't know anything about it. Well, that started a battle on the Samba that was, probably 60, 70 pages long. There's nothing we could have done about it. Just fighting international copyright laws is so expensive. You're going to spend $100,000 getting $5,000 out of these guys. So Dave, just had to say, well, imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. There's nothing I can do. Well, I had been around with Randy on his Randar wheels, and people were saying, oh, they're not DOT certified. I wouldn't run those. I'm scared of them.
People said that?
Huh?
In the VW community, they cared about DOT?
Yeah, they did. A lot of people.
Once upon a time, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it just so happened that I told Randy, I said, I'd love to promote your wheels, but buddy, we're setting ourselves and you up for a firestorm of BS because these guys are saying they're not DOT approved. And he goes, so if I bring you testing results on my wheels from a DOT approved testing facility and they passed, will you promote these wheels? And I said, yeah. A couple of weeks later, he gives me a bunch of papers from a place in Long Beach called Goal Engineering with a DOT number, and passed. They passed DOT. All righty. So I said, hey, folks, here's these new wheels like the old Sears Raiders. There's 2 different types. There's the peaked spoke like I have that were made and sold by Impy. Mm-hmm. Or they were made by the same company, but the peaked ones were sold by Impy. The flat ones like Randy made were sold by Sears Roebuck. You find them in the catalog. So, where was I going with that?
So those were these wheels, but there was also the Dave Deal wheels.
Yeah.
Because there were 2 models of the Randar wheels.
Right. So I helped promote the flat spoke for Randy, and then he watched the battle I had with even Dave Deal before he died got into it on the Samba, and he called the Germans Boris and Doris. One of them's name was Boris, but that's all I really remembered. And said, you guys, you have no right to do this, but I can't do anything about it. And they basically told Dave to F off and die. Mm-hmm. Randy came and said, so you know this Dave Deal guy? I said, yeah, Randy, I know him fairly well now. after all this, I know him better. He goes, well, I would like to make this wheel, but I want his blessing. I want to hear it from him that it's okay. I don't want to just do it. I don't believe in that. Would you introduce me? And I said, yeah, okay. Let me set it up with Dave. So I called Dave and said, this guy wants to meet you about the wheel. Okay. So Randy followed me up in his little convertible with his Randars on it. And I went, hey, Dave, this is Randy. Randy, this is Dave. Me, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with what goes on here. I don't need to know. I don't want to know. You guys fight it out. Well, the next thing I know, there's a picture of Randy with the prototype in his possession and signed permission from Dave Deal, make the wheels. So he did it right. So, and then these new CIP ones that are made in Mexico, it's international copyright. It's not going to do any good. Randy, before he died, had asked that nobody keep making those wheels or reproduce those RDWs. He had asked that nobody do that. Well, they are. Impy is making them. However, in talking to Randy's mom, Impy did reach an agreement with her. Now, normally I'm not the biggest fan Impy ever had, but this time I'm on their side. They did get a hold of Mrs. Picton, and every time they sell a set of those RDW-looking wheels, some of that money goes to her favorite charity for abused animals. So they were going to probably do it one way or another, but at least they had the fortitude and the good vibes to talk to his mom and say, we'd like to honor the guy. What can we do? We're going to make the wheels, but we would like to honor Randy. Mm-hmm. So if I were to ever buy any, he was going to make me a set of RDWs and died before he got the chance. And I've said many times, I'd love to have a set, but they're $4,000 now for a set of RDWs. I can't afford that. And honestly, at this point, if I had a set, I'd trade him in a heartbeat for 10 more minutes with Randy. I would. I'd say, give me 10 minutes with that guy and you can take these RDWs and get him out of here. I love that guy. So that's pretty much the story of the RDWs. And why I was on Facebook not too long ago and some guys said they're copies. The RDWs are copies? Yeah. No, they're not. Yeah, they are. How do you figure? Well, they're copies of wheels that were made before. No. Yeah, a guy made them in Germany, but they were not authorized. That doesn't count. These are the Dave Deal approved ones. These are not copies. The German ones are copies. Mm-hmm. I'll give you that. The ones that Randy has the blessing from Dave on, I don't consider those copies at all because those wheels never were. And if I hadn't climbed up in that attic, they still wouldn't be today. So in a way, I feel kind of guilty about that, but 20/20 hindsight, what can you do?
Share the story, carry it on, because that's the honorable thing to do that Randy did. And
it is.
He passed away right before I got back in the VW, so I'm not going to pretend that I have any connection to him, but that your story and the stories I've heard from also from Jeremy is honor above anything else.
Yeah, he was an honorable man. He did have his share of detractors and enemies or whatever, adversaries, but I am not one of them. I'd go to the mat for him any day. Any day. I'm missing. Okay.
Yeah, on that note, Dave.
Well,
thanks for sharing the stories.
Yeah.
I think that's the best one we can end on. And
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've got stories and people keep telling me how to write a book. Well, I kind of just did. You were my co-author. You're my ghostwriter.
I'll take it, Dave.
There's my book. Talk to Brendan. Keep calling me Brandon.